Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I'm here in Tasmania, North West Tasmania, with Matthew Gunningham of Gunningham Farms. So Matthew, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a bit about yourself, what got you into farming, and why did you choose Tasmania?
Right. Well, thanks, Chilli. It's great to be on your channel, and we're looking forward to having a chat to you. So myself and my wife farm in partnership here in this is a place called Morbana, which is really a super little farming district here in Circular Head. Now, we moved from the UK in the year 2000, so it seems a long time ago now. It was the Sydney Olympics year, and I'd been on a family farm in the UK. We'd been married just a couple of years at that point. We didn't have children, and we perceived that there may be better opportunities farming in the southern hemisphere than perhaps where we were farming. And so we thought that it would be quite an exciting adventure to come and work out in this part of the world and just learn about farming here. So literally we packed up, just the two of us, and we moved out here. And I got a job on a farm right at the top of this road, actually, near the waterfall, Dip Falls. And Pip worked at the local hospital because she trained as a nurse, to find our way around, really, to see if the opportunities that we perceived when we were here for a visit the year before were really there. And certainly our conclusion was that it was really a super place to live. And there were some really tremendous opportunities farming-wise, both from the perspective business-wise, but also from a climatic and soil-type perspective too.
Interesting. So did you always do regen farming and organic, or is this new?
No, so we farmed very conventionally for 20 years. So prior to coming here, I'd farmed for 10 years, and then another 15 years while we were here. Conventional farmers, always very low input farmers. We were very grass based. We knew that North West Tasmania had perhaps a significant advantage over most places in the world, whereby we could grow grass almost all year, and so we really wanted to use that advantage in our business. And so we've been very low input. So we bought very low amounts of purchase feed, if any, oftentimes of the year none at all. We tended to make relatively modest amounts of purchase of conserved fodder, silage and hay and that sort of thing, preferring to have the grass growing ahead of us all the time and storing it in the paddock. So it wasn't really until 2017 where we made the final flip to going to say, right, we're going to take this farm organic. We'd come from that mindset; it suited our temperament, and so taking another step towards and going organic, we thought was just sort of a natural progression for us and for our business. It suited us, let's say.
And since 2017, have you been seeing great differences in your pastures and in the product that you've been getting, the milk and the eggs and everything?
So, since 2017, I would say probably the single biggest change has been in between our ears. We've learnt so much because, whilst I'm saying we were low input farmers, it's as though once the door starts to open to that, to learning about organic farming and regenerative farming, suddenly there's so much more to learn, you find. And so it's been an absolute tremendous joy for us, really, to almost feel like we were starting our farming career all over again. We'd farmed very conventionally, for 20 odd years. We'd used the inputs that were recommended to us by the local agronomist and nutritionist and that sort of thing. And whilst we would take their advice, or we would listen to their advice. We always made our own decisions. But once we started to explore the world of regenerative farming and understand things like soil health and microbial life and diversity under the soil, plant diversity above the ground, and how all of those things fit together, that really then sent us, on a different trajectory altogether to what we had been, and it's been such a pleasure to learn all about it.
Cool. So what do you grow or raise on your farms?
Okay, so we milk 2 herds of dairy cows, one here at Morbana and one 10 kilometres over the top of the Shakespeare Hills at a place called Montjumana, which is not far from where you live. Both farms are run, I would say, on an identical basis. So same numbers of cows on each farm. We calve roughly 700 cows on each farm. They're 100% grass-fed cows. Both farms are certified organic. We're spring calving to make full use of that flush of spring grass. So we calve our cows in August and September, just ahead of the grass taking off through October and November, and our cows milk right the way through till the middle of May. We don't milk after the middle of May. We dry the entire herd off. The cows and us have a couple of months rest, have the ability to plan and recuperate and organise, and then we're into it again for the next season. And that is all set up around the grass curve. So we probably grow half of our feed over that 3-month spring period, and so we have to try and tailor our feed demand, our cows, to the feed supply, the farm, and try and make that fit. So our calving date is all fitted around what the season does. So that's the dairy cows. The dairy cows produce calves, obviously, and we rear quite a lot of dairy beef calves on our block. We've got a runoff block down the road, we sell some calves to other farmers to rear, beef calves. We also rear some ourselves, and we've started now selling beef direct to consumers as well. And then the other part of the business is a free-range laying hen enterprise that we started 4 or 5 years ago. Started as a hobby, just a few hens, and it sort of got out of control, really. So so we deliver eggs all the way along the coast to Launceston, and we send a lot of eggs to Hobart now. And we started off with conventional eggs, and we now supply organic eggs, and the organic eggs is growing all the time, and we foresee that eventually we will only do organic eggs. The conventional eggs were a way for us to start, but the demand for organic eggs seems to be really very strong, so that's what we prefer to do.
Awesome. Let's talk about your pastures. You have multi-species here. I can obviously see a few. There's dandelion and clover, and then whatever these grasses are. Can you talk a bit about your grass?
Yeah. So this is actually probably one of the more basic pastures that we have on the farm. This is comprised primarily of perennial ryegrass and white clover. That would be the base, and that would be the base of the pastoral industry throughout southern Australia and New Zealand. It's very productive, but what has happened over time is that these pasture species, particularly the newer ones, and this is actually an old pasture, but the newer ones have been bred to really respond to soluble fertilizers and require a fair amount of care or inputs coming into them. What we've found is that by starting to mix other species in, and some of the species that we found that really work well in our environment we like cocksfoot. That's a very resilient and quite drought tolerant grass. So we now use quite a lot of cocksfoot if we're ever topping up pastures. We also like red clover. That does a really good job in the summer. It's deeper rooted than white clover, and so during those hotter, drier months, it really comes into its own, particularly when you're on a longer rotation length or you're giving each paddock a longer rest period between grazings. two other standouts are plantain and chicory. Plantain really loves this red soil that we're on. We're on lovely volcanic red soils here, and the high rainfall and the grazing regime. Certainly, the plantain has become a very productive species for us, and chicory as well, both of which have got long tap roots, so they can access a much greater volume of soil under the ground, allowing them to be much more drought tolerant as well. So we found that just by mixing just a handful of other species in, and there are other things that we regularly use. We'll put lucerne in, and timothy's another grass which does very well, particularly in our wetter environment. Other legumes as well, and then a couple of herbs. Sheep's bonnet is one that actually seems to do very well here, and probably contributes a small amount of dry matter to the mix. But I would say those big six species are the ones that really carry most of the weight, on our farm. And over time, if we've had to renovate a pasture, we will always go to those as the base. Or if we do damage in the winter, you'd imagine, when you've got, say, 600 odd cows, on a very wet day and the rain's driving them up into a heap in the corner, you get a muddy patch in the corner or down the side of a fence. So generally in September, we'll go along and we'll spread some seed on those areas, and they look terrible after the cows have come out of the paddock on that wet day. And then, later on in the season, they're probably the most productive area of the paddock because they've got these lovely new species, a real salad mixture coming up. And, so you've actually improved them out of sight, despite, not wanting to look at them the day the cows came out of them.
Have you seen an improvement in the health of your cows with more multi-species in your paddock?
I'm convinced that we do. We get very low levels of animal health problems. One of our big fears when we took the step from, say, conventional farming to moving into organic farming was, how do we deal with, the general health issues, day-to-day health issues, without relying on, the vet, relying on antibiotics, wormers and those sorts of things. And I must say that as an organic farmer, you still can use, say, for instance, if you've got a cow that's sick, you can use antibiotics, but she's then precluded from putting milk in the vat in a milking cow's situation for 6 months. There's a really long withhold. You've almost written the season off for her as such. So, we certainly can use antibiotics where it's absolutely necessary, but you can see that we would rather focus on preventing problems than curing them. Prevention, Benjamin Franklin said, is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I absolutely subscribe to that. So what we found, and it's quite interesting, as we went along, that we get less mastitis and less animal health issues in general than we used to. And someone had told me that would be the case. And early days, I couldn't understand how could that be the case. Why? What would be the reason behind getting less animal health issues? And I actually now believe that it is because they've got a more diverse and healthier diet. Everything's working well. The microbes in the soil are firing on all cylinders. What I can say is that when we were never a heavy synthetic nitrogen user, but we would use it at strategic times during the year just to push growth along. And probably at the time hadn't probably recognised the unintended consequences of some of these soluble fertilisers. When we finally stopped using it, it became very clear to us that our farm had been quite reliant on this synthetic nitrogen, even though we weren't a heavy user of it. And because the farm really looked a terrible colour. It was almost hard to look at. It sort of went a horrible yellowy colour. It didn't seem to grow very well in that first season, and we wondered whether or not we'd even done the right thing. We just said, gee, look at the place. It just looks terrible. What I now recognise is that by what would we say? supplementing the farm with synthetic nitrogen, so the microbes really didn't have to work and do that job themselves. We basically put them to sleep and made them redundant. And over time, the farm has dramatically improved because those natural processes, those natural cycles have started to work again. So, you know, our view now is we grow just as much grass as we did before, but now we're not using synthetic nitrogen or soluble fertilizers to do it. And so it just goes to show the power of soil health and the power of the microbes under the ground, if you can get the other parts of it right.
You rotationally graze. When do you know when a pasture is prime grazing height, length?
Yeah, I suppose we always talk in kilograms of dry matter per hectare, which, you know, is something that I knew nothing about when we very first came here. When we're talking about cow's feed, we always talk about dry matter because as you'd imagine, grass has got a lot of moisture in it, and the moisture content of grass is different to the moisture content of silage and hay. So in order to standardise what you're talking about, you always talk about dry matter. So it's as though you've cut a certain amount, you know, say a metre square down to cow grazing height. You've taken it away, you've dried it, and that then tells you how many kilos of dry matter you've got on that 1 square metre, times it by 10,000, that gives you a hectare. So we can measure that though without going through the rigmarole of cutting and drying. And what you do is as you go on over time, you become quite attuned to what a paddock with, say, 3,000 kilos looks like. You know, and we're looking for, you know, a grazing height of about that as ideal. We don't really want to go much above that. For dairy cows, for our beef cattle, we certainly do, and we'll run longer rotations for our beef cattle. But in the spring, we're probably on that sort of a grazing height. As we go through, we get onto longer rotations in the summer, and then our grazing height, you know, will increase. And the reason for that is because we want to try and store grass in the paddock. We want to keep it growing in front of us, and so we want to have a lot of days of pasture recovery between grazing and the next grazing. That allows the plants to really express their full potential. It allows the roots to go down and really access a large volume of soil and the moisture that's down there. And it also shades the soil, which keeps it cooler. So there's a lot of benefits to actually being, and so we run longer rotations than a lot of dairy farmers do now even, because we recognise that, you know, that last week, 10 days, fortnight of rest period, you grow an exponential amount of feed. But our rotation lengths vary through the year. At the moment, we're about 30 days before we're back to a paddock again. And once we get towards the summer, on dry land areas anyway, we'll be on 70, 75 days rest period then during that time, because we really want to stretch out and push a long runway of feed ahead of us. And it's, for us, from our perspective, it's much better from an ecological point of view to carry grass in the paddock, and from a financial point of view, because I don't want to put a machine between the cow and her feed. I want the cow to go out and do the work. I want her to harvest the feed. I want her to spread her own manure, and that we just bring them in and milk them. That's, you know, that's a very, very simple, low-cost way, you know, I'd call it solar-powered dairy farming, really.
So, on Instagram, I saw you posted a reel about dung beetles. Dung beetles, I don't know much about them. Can you tell me some facts about them and how they improve the pasture? Yes,
dung beetles are fantastic. Dung beetles have a really important role to play on a farm, and I suppose in the ecosystem generally. So dung beetles, and we've got a number of varieties of dung beetles here, and we've actually acted as a dung beetle nursery for some other varieties that have been brought into the state and released. So we've actually bred them up. And the reason we've done it in conjunction with Cradle Coast NRM, and the reason that they like to use this farm is they know there's no chemicals being used on the farm, no drenches, nothing that can affect the health of the dung beetle, so it gives them the real opportunity to get started here. So dung beetles, they obviously, as the name suggests, they feed on dung. Actually, they feed on the microbes in the dung. They are real excavators, so they burrow down. They'll take a ball of dung and they'll burrow down, and some of them quite deep. Some of them as deep as this and even further. So they'll get right down into the soil, and they'll take the dung balls down. They'll lay their eggs down there, and the idea is that when the larvae hatch out, that there's a food source for them. But you can imagine, and some of them are quite big. The blue bomber, they're that sort of size. So they actually make significant holes. There's obviously smaller varieties as well, but they make fairly significant holes down into the ground, and that will it aerates the soil, so it allows air in. When you get a rainstorm, it lets water in, so you've got water infiltration as well. And the other thing it's carrying the dung down, so it's taking a lot of the cow muck down under the ground, and so it's actually reducing the amount of, or the feed source for flies where they would like to lay their eggs. So it reduces the fly issues on a farm as well. And even they're saying worm issues too, because if you've got worms, they cycle through the dung, right. And so that takes them down, so they're no longer able to do anything either. That excavating effect that they have, where they're actually mixing the soil, quite deep down into the soil profile. They reckon over a 10-year period, if you've got a large population of dung beetles, your entire farm will have the soil mixed at one point or another over that 10-year period. So they do a huge cultivation benefit as well by mixing dung into the soil and aerating the soil, allowing water infiltration. I can't speak enough about them really. They're just a fabulous thing to have on the farm. We deliberately set out on an adventure to try and see what we could actually achieve ourselves. We've had a family since we've been here, so we've got 5 children now, who the eldest 2 are already making strides in the business in related areas themselves. Henry, our eldest son, has got a contracting business, and our eldest daughter Amelia is helping us at the moment with beef sales and grassroots festival, which we should have a chat about at some point. So we have wanted to build a business that we could feel, that we could feel good about, that would provide a living for us, but we felt positive about that there's a purpose behind it. It's not just a way of making money. Of course, we all need money, and so that's important that the business works, but there has to be a purpose behind what we're doing, so that so that we feel positively and we can enlist other people, to help us and get on board with us, in that purpose, I suppose. For us, so we milk 2 dairy herds. We've got beef enterprise. We've got the chickens. So we've got a reasonable sized business. We can't do everything ourselves, and so we've had to as we've gone on, we've had to have people that had a similar vision or a similar view to come on board with us to help us. And to be honest, it's been one of the great pleasures of growing a business is the people that come along with you for the journey. When you've got a group of positive, energetic people that are with you, that share similar goals and a similar outlook on life and how a farm should work and how working together, all of that sort of thing, that's just been an absolute pleasure for us, and such a privilege to have such a lovely group of people that work alongside us. So we love that. So in terms of goals, it's to continue to develop our business further. Our eggs, as I said, at the moment we're split between conventional and organic. The organic has been growing, so one of the goals is to take that just to complete organic enterprise. We've recently started selling beef direct, and we want to grow that side of things because we think that that's a really good way of providing direct to consumer really nice quality beef, better than they can get in the supermarket, but priced better than they can buy at the supermarket as well. So we see there's a win-win there between us and the ultimate customer, consumer of the product. And as I mentioned, we've got back in February we ran a field day on our farm at Montjumana, all about regenerative farming, soil health, pasture species, animal welfare, renewable power, and farmer health and well-being as well. The whole thing, because we're so excited about agriculture, we're so excited about what we're doing. We just we love it every day. And we believe in the way that we farm so strongly that we wanted to share some of that with other people. And so to that end, we invited speakers, some international speakers, some really fabulous people from Australia. We had people came from all over the state as well as interstate. And so at the end of it, we were that excited about it that we've now got another one in the works for February this year. And it's really aimed at a broad church of farmers. So it's not only aimed at people that are organic farmers or regenerative farmers. We want everyone to come and go away with something that they can tangibly use on their farm that will make their farming more resilient, more profitable, and maybe improve their lives. One of the things that we did is we asked some farmers who had made some changes in their business to come and speak and share their journey, so that it gave people the opportunity, attendees, the opportunity to see how making some of these changes had impacted for better the lives of the farmers that were speaking. And honestly, we just had such a great time organising it. And so next year's one, 12th and 13th of February 2025, is going to be even better. We've got more people coming, more exhibitors. We've got Nicole Masters is one of our headline speakers. Jim Elizondo from the United States is another, and a fabulous other lineup of speakers, as well as we're working hard on putting together some demonstration sites as well, so that we've got some grazing trials, pasture species trials, farm forestry to show people. Lots of, I think, very practical things that people can take away and put to work on their own farms and in their own businesses and in their own lives, immediately. That's what we want to try to do, is to sort of imbue some. It's just if it's just one new thought in somebody's mind, because for us, all the learning is such a pleasure, and so running something like this and having the opportunity to have these people here and talk to them and learn from them and mix with other like-minded people and people that are on the journey or want to get onto the journey and start to learn themselves, it's just fabulous.
So that's Grassroots 2025,
Yep.
12th and 13th of February.
That's right. Yep.
And so where do we book our tickets?
Yeah, so if you go on to grassrootsfestival.org, that's our website. You can also follow us on the socials as well, Grassroots Festival Tas. Just look. All the information is on there. Tickets go on sale shortly, and it's going to be fabulous. We're really, really excited about it.
Awesome. So Matthew, before we wrap up the interview, is there anything else you would like to talk about? It can be anything. Your farm, cows, chickens, pastures, soil, whatever.
I suppose it's what I was trying to convey before was the fact that for us, very much it was a journey, and we didn't just make a decision in 2016 or 17, right, that's it, and suddenly everything was hunky-dory. It was very much has been a step-by-step learning process that I must say, as a conventional farmer, it worried us to start with because we were then doing things different to our neighbours. You know, was it going to work? We had financial commitments. We had people, you know, working in the business with us. We had to make sure that the business still worked so we could pay our wages, meet our financial commitments, pay our suppliers, all of this kind of thing. So it is daunting when you step away from the mainstream and you're groping for information and you just don't know where to go for it. And so, you know, what that led us to was reading lots of books, trying to find like-minded people or people that have been on the journey to ask and learn from ourselves. You know, and it was very much a gradual opening up of our mindset as to how farming could be compared to how we perhaps, you know, learned over the previous 20 years. We'd learned and been conditioned that, you know, when you had a problem, you rang an agronomist, or you got a drum of this or a can of that, and that's how you solved the problem. And so trying to look more holistically and try to get in front of things so they don't ever even become an issue in the first place, you know, that for us has been just a real pleasure, that learning, and just such an interest. And I suppose that you have to have an inquiring mind, because a lot of what we have learned isn't necessarily, like, you can't go to the local farm supply store and get that knowledge, because, you know, what they survive on is being able to sell you something. And, you know, and often what you're searching for isn't you know, an answer in a tin. What you're searching for is another technique or way of looking at something, or a different way of doing something, changing things around on the farm, and, you know, looking at the bigger picture. So you know, they talk about, you know, getting to the root of the issue rather than, you know, just hacking at the leaves. It's actually, you know, trying to dive down and actually get to the root of whatever the problem may be or the issue that you're facing, so that then goes away completely as being an issue. And so it's having that, you know, being able to find those sort of like-minded people and people you can learn from, and books and recommendations. So, you know, we feel like we've done several university degrees, all end on end over the last, you know, 6 or 7 years, as we've gradually delved into it, and have really tapped into a nice community of other farmers that are like-minded, because we think ultimately that, you know, we are going to have to change the way that we produce food. I say we, you know, as farmers generally. We've got a huge responsibility. We've got control over such a massive amount of natural resources as a farmer, compared to, you know, someone that maybe has a job in an office or does something else for a living. So, you know, we have to be very, very mindful of that huge effect we can have on society compared, you know, to lots of other people. We've got, you know, soil and pastures and crops and trees and water and air, you know, and so all of those things, you know, we have to show really responsible stewardship of and thoughtful stewardship of, I believe. My view is that we can't continue the way we're going. So we have to find other ways to do it. And what I've seen, you know, in the time we've been farming in this way and trying to work at improving what we're doing all the time, is that we're highly productive. And so, you know, my view is that we have to find other ways to do things. And there are lots and lots of techniques out there that allow you to be, you know, highly productive and reduce and potentially eliminate a lot of those synthetic soluble fertilizers, you know, pesticides, those sorts of things. I just think that what we've done is we've created a very fragile system that has to have these inputs around it to keep it working. And actually, as you go down the road of more sustainable farming practices, regenerative farming, you become you have a much more resilient system. It's much more robust. It looks after its own self, because you know, nature is self-regulating, and you're farming much more in tune with nature. And so you're relying then much more on natural processes to keep everything ticking along and working. So my belief is absolutely, and there's a huge amount of things that that a conventional farmer could do to take risk out of their business, borrowing practices from organics and regenerative farming, which would allow them to reduce their inputs and improve the ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, a farm isn't disconnected from the rest of nature. A farm is part of an ecosystem, and so to think of it that way and treat it that way means that you've got a much more resilient business and a much more resilient setup to work with then.
So where can we find your great beef, your organic eggs? Where can we find your produce?
Yeah, well, so our milk actually all goes to Bellamy's for organic infant formula. So Fonterra process it for Bellamy's. So actually a lot of it gets exported to China and Vietnam and now Indonesia as well. So that's actually what happens to a good deal of our milk. It's on the supermarket shelves here too, Bellamy's, and we really value our partnership with them. I think they're a great company and they're doing some really good stuff. Our beef is marketed under the same brand name as our eggs, which is Shakespeare Hills. So shakespearehills.com.au is our website, and that has information about our eggs, about beef, and you can sign up to our newsletter to find out what's happening on the farm, and just so you're aware of any offers and ordering and those types of things too. So yeah, that's the best place to find us.
Awesome, terrific. Oh, and your Instagrams?
Shakespeare_Hills. So that's for the eggs and the beef.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's.
And then the grassroots one.
And grassroots, yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Matthew, for the interview, and thank you to everyone watching on YouTube. Check out Shakespeare Hills / Gunningham Farms. And as always, like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.